Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Common Sense with Dr. Ben Carson. I'm your host, Ben Carson, and I've got a remarkable woman with us today, someone who's been leading the youth revival movement in colleges all across the country. She's a wife, a mother, a follower of Jesus, and now an author. Obviously, she's very busy, and we'll talk a little bit more about her book coming up. We have Tonya Prewett. She's been with us before, and the last time you were here, Tonya, you were just off of a fresh outing at Auburn University, with thousands of students involved and hundreds of people being baptized. Can you talk a little bit about that event, and how did that experience lead you to start UniteUs?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on, Dr. Carson. Always a joy and honor to be on your podcast. Unite Auburn in September of 2023. We are almost 2 years out from that very first event. And I'll just say, God has done unbelievable things since then. And we started out at that event not knowing if any students would come. God had given me a vision for thousands gathered in our basketball arena. We planned an event. We didn't sell tickets the first time, didn't have registration, had no idea, what God would do that night, and got into the arena, and over 5,000 students had gathered. And we thought we would end with worship in the arena, and God had another plan. And so we ended up at a local lake on campus and ended up baptizing over 200 students that night. We were there far past midnight, baptizing students. Finally got to a point where we said, go get baptized in your church. Like, don't not do this. But just a beautiful demonstration of God and how he was getting ready to ignite something in our nation through college students. All started at Auburn.
Well, there's been all kinds of things, University of Kentucky, Texas A&M. How has the movement evolved up until this point?
A couple of nights after Auburn's event, I remember waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning and just feeling the strong sense of the Lord saying, form a team, do it quickly. This is going to spread. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I formed a board and a 501c3. I started hiring people, didn't have the funds to do it, but just in faith, feeling like that's what God was telling me to do. And we started getting contacted after that by schools all over the nation, FSU being the very first one to have students call me and say, hey, we have friends that are committing suicide. We're just desperate. Would you bring Unite to FSU? And that's where it started. And once we got to FSU, we were getting contacted by hundreds of students from all over the nation saying, please bring Unite to our campus. And so we try to keep up with the demand. We obviously can't get into more than 6 or 7 per semester. We have 7 coming up in the fall, but it's just, these students are hungry. They're hungry.
Have you done any broadcasting of some of the events?
We have been on a lot of news stations, and then we have a social media and website presence, and that's where most people see what's going on. And then our speakers and bands obviously promote the events and what God's doing at each event. So that's really all we've done so far. But yes, it's been incredible to see just the response we're getting from other universities and people all over the nation.
Well, a lot of people say that the Gen Z generation is just not very spiritual, or at least that they're spiritually apathetic. Do you find that to be the case? I suspect you're going to say no. And what is attracting these young people?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great question. And I'll say my answer to that about 4 years ago might have been yes. But my answer to that today is very much no. And I have the privilege of working with students on campuses around the nation. What I see is a great hunger And Dr. Carson, what I'll say to you is probably in 2020, when COVID hit and shut the world down, it shut our students down. And I think they went through a period of isolation and just a time of questioning their identity. Why am I here? What am I doing? Being alone all the time with their devices created a lot of addictions and things that they just find themselves now wanting to come out of. And so I think that was probably the beginning of this generation coming out of COVID and that isolated time of saying, hey, I want more. And it created a hunger. The addictions that came out of that, the comparison, the different things that came out of that, didn't satisfy. And I think they're now so hungry for what satisfies, and that's only going to be found in Jesus Christ.
Well, we've also seen over the last few decades an abandoning of faith and of a relationship with God. And I think people actually have had an opportunity to observe the results. And I don't think there are too many people who say we're better off, that we're a happier society and that we're more fulfilled. So I think that kind of thing awakens the hunger in people to find something that really does fulfill. Because if there is no God, if there is no afterlife, if there is no source of right and wrong, then what the heck is the purpose of being here? And I suspect a lot of people who have moved away from spiritual life can get a little bit frustrated. There was a song many years ago, this was before you were born, called "Is That All There Is?" And it was a pretty interesting song, but this was like in 1970. But, what are some of the common misperceptions that you've encountered with Gen Z's faith, things that you've encountered?
I think often you'll hear a lot of adults say there's no hope for this generation. They're too far gone. They're too caught up in the things of the world, and really there's no way back. And I just have to disagree, because what I'm seeing is the total opposite of that. I'm seeing students run to the cross. I'm seeing students run to the altar. I'm seeing students come forward and confess and say things out loud and get freedom from things that have kept them in bondage, and in a place of being stuck for so long, because they just want to be free. And that freedom is found in Christ. And I believe that they're going to that. And I think I heard this quote one time that said, I might be too young to start a revival, but I might be or I could be too old to stop one. And so I think a lot of times our generation will look at things and think it has to be done a certain way, or the only way it can be done is this way, or our experience would tell us it can't happen. But this generation has the greatest faith to believe for anything. And because they're so hungry and seeking God at a newer level, a deeper level, they're experiencing things that our generation would miss out on.
Absolutely. And we, interestingly enough, have people in the administration from top down who are interested in religious freedom, who've opened an office and a commission on religious freedom in our country, because there's been a tendency to try to push particularly Christianity into the background. At universities, they're happy to talk about Muslims and Buddhists and anything but Christians. Once you start talking about Christianity, no, we're not talking about that. And of course, that's ridiculous when you think about the fact that this country was founded on Judeo-Christian values, and that our very founding document says that our rights come from our Creator, also known as God. And one of the wonderful things about what you're doing and what others who are emphasizing faith are doing is giving people a road back to the foundations of our country and helping them to realize you have nothing to be ashamed of. And the more people who talk about it, the more people will get excited, the more people will join. No one wants to feel that they're the lone person out there advocating for something. But when they see others they become encouraged. And
That's true.
that's what witnessing is all about. But your upcoming book, Roses to Revival. Where did that name come from, and why did you write it?
Mm-hmm. So my daughter actually went on a secular TV show, and the theme for the show was the rose. And it was a very unlikely journey, not one that we would have sought out, but God doesn't always do things the way that we think he does. And sometimes he will have a purpose in something that we can't see or understand at the time. And so through this journey with her going on the show, she was able to take a stand for her faith and purity on national television in front of 10 million people. And from that, coming out of it, created a platform, honestly, that allowed us to step into what we're doing now, which is leading revival on college campuses. And we're taking that message of faith and purity from campus to campus. And so my book, Roses to Revival, basically starts with an unlikely beginning, and it's led to an extraordinary ending. Not an ending, but an extraordinary thing that God is doing. God can take something that seems very unlikely and turn it into something extraordinary. That's the purpose of my book and the purpose of the title.
Wow. Well, what are some of the stories that you can tell us about that led to such transformation in people's lives?
Mm-hmm. I will tell you this. If I could say anything about the book and the main focus of the book, it is never underestimate the power of prayer. Prayer is what started these revival moments. Prayer is what keeps it going, and prayer is what will keep it going in the future. Lots of prayer. And so for me, I tell the story of how this all started when I was mentoring college students and hearing, I can mentor a college student thinking that everything's great and spend a little bit of time with them and find out life is not as great as they make it seem, especially on social media. There's a lot of secret hidden pain. And after mentoring some of these students, hearing their stories, I just realized this is a generation that feels hopeless. And many of the girls I was mentoring would say things like, I can't cope with life. Like, I want to die. And I had heard one story after another, and just remember a day where I stood up and said, no more. Like, I refuse to sit back and watch these students suffer, and started leading prayer on Auburn's campus. That's when I had the vision for Unite. And I do believe God is bringing hope back to a hopeless generation. And we are seeing them walk in freedom and step into their purpose, which is the goal and purpose behind Unite. And I will say another story that I shared that I would love to tell is in 2020, after my daughter came off the show, COVID hit, the world shut down, and I got very sick. I got so sick that I came very close to death. And I remember waking up one day thinking it was my last day and just crying out to God saying, if you let me live, if you will have mercy on me and let me live, I'll do anything you ask me to do. And I remember at that time, that's when I started getting better, started mentoring these students. Auburn happened. And I'll tell you, even right before that, even right before the Auburn event, something happened in my life where I went through a time of deep depression. I didn't understand it. Nothing was wrong, but I just went through deep depression, and I was questioning, God, why do you let me live? And I think in that moment, it was like in 2020, I'm saying, God, let me live. In 2023, 3 years later, I'm saying, God, why do you let me live? But to summarize all of that, I will say this. I do believe that God allowed me to go through that time of depression and that time of anxiety and those thoughts of why are you letting me live, so that I could relate so well to these students, so that I could feel the pain that they go through and that I would never stop fighting for them.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to be a very gripping story. People want to read it just to see how you went through that experience. I had that experience myself and came very close to death. I thought I was on my way home to be with the Lord, but somehow he decided I'd live a little bit longer. So that was great. But what do you hope that readers will carry with them from the book? And when is the book actually going to be released?
I'll start with the second question. The book will be released August 26th, which is Tuesday. Super excited about that. And you can buy it on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. I would say the main thing I would like for them to take away from this, number one, is we serve a big God, so don't pray short. Pray big prayers. Trust God for big things. He can do it. Nothing is impossible with God. And then number two, I would say your deepest pain can propel you into your deepest purpose. And so for all of us, I went through a time period where I had battled for many, many years unforgiveness and just bitterness. And I think God got me to a place right before Unite Auburn where he said, deal with this thing. And I met with a counselor. I confessed. I said the things. I got free from it. And I feel like that was very necessary before this mass assignment. And so, massive assignment. And so I just say pain can lead to purpose. Don't think that the thing that you're going through can't have a great purpose if you confess it, get free from it, and then step into the thing God's calling you to do.
That's a wonderful message. So many people, young and old alike, get into this trap of feeling that they're not worthy or that they've done too many things to be acceptable by God. And it's because they don't really know him.
Yeah.
God is love. That's what he is. And, if you would be happy in heaven, he's going to find a way to save you. Mm-hmm. If you would be miserable in heaven, why would he take you there so you could be miserable forever? Mm-hmm. That would not be a loving God. Yeah. You just have to understand the love of God and how it affects each one of us. Mm-hmm. But how can people get involved with UniteUs? I bet there's some people listening say, wow, this sounds like something I want to be involved with.
Yeah. People can reach out to us through our website. And for our events, we typically have between 50 and 60 volunteers. And so that's always a big help if you live in the city that we're going to that campus to volunteer at the event. Obviously, prayer is the biggest thing that you could do for us. And then they can give and donate towards these college campus visits through our website.
Okay. And, something I've been wondering about, do you meet with resistance on behalf of some of the campuses?
Dr. Carson, I will say we have not. It's been such a blessing so far that we have not. If I remember correctly, we may have had one situation where a basketball venue would not approve us using their facility. And I don't know that it was because they were resisting the spiritual aspect of it as much as their practice schedules were just a hindrance. But we have not really had any. We did have an organization after Auburn that kind of came at us, but that's all been taken care of. And so honestly, God has just gone before us and blessed it.
Tonya, you've obviously had a great influence in this country. What about internationally? What's going on the international scene?
I will tell you, the night before Auburn happened, I felt like God spoke to me. He said, unite Auburn, unite other college campuses, unite the nation. Israel will be linked. I had no idea what that meant, but Auburn happened. We're uniting other college campuses. I believe there's a greater gathering coming in our nation's capital. And I'm so honored to be able to tell you that I just got back from a trip in Israel with 20 Unite student leaders from all over the nation.
Absolutely. And I would say to people, if you do run into resistance, and sometimes you will, just recognize that anything that you suffer in this life is a flash in the pan against the backdrop of eternity. Right. And look at the bigger picture of what's going on. And what you're doing, what UniteUs is doing, and others who are bringing faith to the forefront are helping people to realize there's a lot more than just this. Yeah. You don't have to ever ask yourself, is that all there is? Mm-hmm. And that gives you the energy to move forward with spring in your step.
Yeah.
You know, God has not given us a spirit of fear,
Mm.
but of confidence. And can you imagine what happens in our country if we see a wider revival once again? You know, some people are amazed at how our country rose from nothing to the pinnacle of the world in record time. It wasn't a coincidence.
Yeah.
It was because we had Judeo-Christian values. We cared about each other. We had a sense of community. We honored life. And we honored liberty and freedom. And I think any country who grasps those things and wrap it around faith, they're going to do well.
Yeah.
And it serves as a wonderful example. You've obviously had a great influence in this country. What about internationally? What's going on the international scene?
Mm. You know, I will tell you, the night before Auburn happened, I felt like God spoke to me. He said, "Unite Auburn, unite other college campuses, unite the nation. Israel will be linked." I had no idea what that meant, but Auburn happened. We're uniting other college campuses. I believe there's a greater gathering coming in our nation's capital, and I'm so honored to be able to tell you that I just got back from a trip in Israel with 20 Unite student leaders from all over the nation.
Well, I just want to thank you on behalf of the audience for the courage that you've exhibited and the energy going towards saving others. You could be leading a life of complete comfort and never have to worry about anybody else, but you're not doing that. And it's making a difference for everybody. So I want to thank you. Keep up the good work, and God bless your ministry.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Dr. Carson. It's all.
What an inspiring conversation with Tonya Prewett. You know, what it shows you is that the passion of one person can make all kind of things happen. And look what she's doing with revivals on college campuses and the impact that it will have on others. Because just when Jesus was crucified and then arose and went back to heaven and left the 12 behind, look what they did. Look what that inspiration did. Now there are billions of people around the world who have been affected by that testimony and by that witness. And I want you to think, after listening to this program, not only that this is inspiring, it's great what one person can do, but ask yourself, what can you do in the environment where you are, where you have your sphere of influence? Are there some young people who might benefit from your experience, from your wisdom, from your mentoring? It's all about what happens in the future and the role that you can play in doing that. And that's it for this week. Give us those 5-star ratings. Tell your friends about us. We want common sense to be common once again. And remember the foundational pillars are faith, liberty, community, and life. See you next week.